Alright, hello Algebra. So on Thursday, before we let out of school for conferences, we got through about half of this lesson. So we're just going to go ahead and pick up where we left off, a little bit of review of what we already went over. So if we're factoring something like this one here on the left, which looks backwards because the video is flipped right now, but that's okay because hopefully it'll be on the left when you see it. So we're going to factor this one. And when we're factoring things, we're looking for, again, numbers that multiply to give us this number. So we want things that multiply to our last number and things that add to our middle number. So we're looking for numbers that are going to multiply and give us 6 and add up to 5. So usually easier to start with the one that they're multiplying to because generally there are fewer things that multiply to give you something than that add up to give you something. So if we're looking for things that multiply to 6, our options are really either 1 and 6 or 2 and 3. And 2 and 3 are the ones that are going to add up to 5, so those are the ones we want. And since this is adding and that's adding, if everything's adding, everything's going to be adding when we factor it. So this is going to be an x plus 2, and that's going to be an x plus 3. Okay, same sort of thing over here, except we're going to end up with some subtraction. But they're both going to be subtraction because we still want this to be a plus 21. And if we're multiplying things, you can either get a positive from a positive and a positive, like this one, or you can get a positive from a negative times a negative. Those are your two options. Those are the only two things that are going to give you a positive number if you're multiplying. It's either positive and positive or negative and negative. So since this is a plus, those are our only two options. And if we want things that are going to add up to a negative 10, they're both going to have to be negative. So same sort of thing, we're looking for factors of 21, which again are either 1 and 21, or really your only other option here is 3 and 7. So that definitely doesn't add up to 10, that one does, those are the ones we want. So again, x plus 3 and an x plus 7, except those are both minuses, because we want that to be a minus 10. Okay, so those are our factors, so that's our factored form of that. So those are the two we talked about a bit on Thursday. I know it's been more than a week, so good refresher. So that's what was going on Thursday. Today we're going to mix it up a little bit and talk about what happens if that last number is negative. So if that last number is negative, in order to get a negative when we're multiplying, you could either have a positive times a negative or a negative times positive. You're not going to get a negative from two positives or from two negatives. You got to have one of each. So then, if we're looking at this, we know we want a positive and a negative, and we're looking for factors of 48. Now, you might be thinking, well, there's nothing that goes into 48 that's going to add up to 2. But if one of them is negative, then instead of adding, we can think about it as we're subtracting those numbers. So one of those numbers is negative, which means you can either think about adding a negative or you can think about it as subtracting those. Either way, our number is going to be getting smaller because we want to end up with a 2. So if we're looking for factors of 48, we have more options this time, because 48 could either be a 1 and 48, it could be 2 and 24, it could be 3 and 8, it could be 4 and 6, and that's pretty much it for I can multiply. Okay, no, not 3 and 8. 3 and 8 does not give you 48. 3 and 16 gives you 48. Okay, that's better. Knew there should be more. Okay, so it could be 3 and 16, it could be 4 and 12, that's better. Or it could be 6 and 8, and I think that's all your options for 48. Now, if the one that's going to give you 2 jumps out at you right away, like obviously 1 and 48 is not going to give you 2. Obviously you want numbers that are closer together, so if you can see these ones right away, and that jumps out at you and you don't have to list out all of them, that's fine. I'm just going to keep listing off all of them just in case that one's not going to jump out at you right away. So if you want to make a nice list, a good place to start is go with, okay, does 1 go into it? Well, 1's always going to go into it. Does 2, does 3, does 4, does 5, does 6? And once you get to the point where your numbers are smaller over here than they are over here, so if I got 6 and 8, that's pretty close together. The only thing between those is going to be 7. 7 doesn't go into 48, it goes into 49, but not 48. So those are the ones we want, because those are the ones that are going to subtract and give us 2. None of these other ones are even going to get close. So that means we want a 6, and we want an 8. And then the question is, what do we do about those positives and negatives? Because we said we wanted 1 of each. We want 1 to be positive and 1 to be negative. And what we're looking for is, how are we going to end up with a negative 2? So if we want a negative 2, so if we want to end up with a negative number where we're adding those two things, we want our bigger number to be negative. Because if we make this a minus 8 and a plus 6, when we FOIL that back, we're going to have our x squared. I'm just going to stick this over here for right now. We're going to have our x squared. We're going to have this minus 8x, because foiling first, outside, inside, last. So first, outside, inside, 6x. Last, we're going to have this 6 times 8, and that's going to be a minus. So we got the minus 48 that we wanted. We've got this negative 8x, and a positive 6x is going to give us a negative 2x. And oh, hey, look, it's the thing we started off with. So if you FOIL your factors back, and you get the thing you started off with, you did it right. So you can always check these by FOILing them back and seeing if you get the thing that you started off with in the first place. If you did it right. Yay. Okay, now we're gonna get rid of this, because I just used all of my space over there. Okay. So that's the idea. So if we've got a negative over here, and we want a positive and a negative, we want 1 of each. So if we want that to be a 12, ooh, there's no number there. If there's not a number there, what's automatically in front of there is a, and I'm hoping you just said 1. So that's going to be a 1x. So if there's not a number there, and it makes you feel better, just go ahead and put that 1 there, so we know that's what we're looking for. We do not want numbers that are going to add or subtract, in this case, subtract to 1. So our options for 12 are either 1 and 12, 2 goes in there, so 2 and 6 gives you 12, 3 goes in there, 3 and 4, and then your next biggest thing is 4, which we've already got. So if we want to end up with a 1, again, we're subtracting because we want 1 to be positive, 1 to be negative there. So we're subtracting those, so 1 and 12 isn't going to give us 1. Whoops. 2 and 6 isn't going to give us 1. Ooh, hey, 3 and 4. So those are the ones that we want this time. So I'm going to have an x and an x. I'm going to have a 3. I'm going to have a 4. And if we want to end up with a positive 1, this time we want our bigger number to be positive. So that 4 is going to be a plus 4. And that 3 is going to be a minus 3. And again, if we want to check this by FOILing it back, we've got our x squared. We've got plus this 4x. Minus that 3x. Minus that 12. And sure enough, we've got an x squared, positive 4x, and a negative 3x gives us a plus, whoops, I can write sideways, plus a 1x. If you want to call it a 1x, that's fine. If you just want to call it x, that's also fine. And then we still got that minus 12 there at the end, which is what we started off with, either with that 1 there or not. So we know we did it right. Yay. And again, watch out for, this is not your answer. This part is your answer. So if you FOIL it back to check, great. Just watch out for, this is what we actually want. That's actually the answer we're looking for. So I suppose I should circle that over here too. So that's the thing you're looking for. If you want to FOIL it back to check, that's fine. Just watch out for it. That's not your answer. This is just us checking to see if the answer is right, and it is, so we're good. Okay, now, that's a lot of different cases of what's going on, so I went ahead and made a little chart. And this is the point where I would normally tell you, hey, you might want to jot this down. So if you want to pause this screen and jot this down in your notebook somewhere, if you're starting off with two positive things, so if you have an x squared plus a something x plus a something else, both of your factors are going to be positive. If you have an x squared minus a something x plus something else, both of your factors are going to be negative. If you have an x squared plus a something x, so if you have a plus something and then a minus something, then you have one of each. And your bigger number is going to be the plus. Now, I stuck it over here, but you could also flip-flop those as long as your plus goes with your bigger number and your minus goes with your smaller number. So when we had this, you could have either said an x minus 3 and an x plus 4, or an x plus 4 and an x minus 3. Either one's fine. And then this last one is the one that tends to throw people, because if you have a minus and a minus, you would think, well, I'm going to end up with two minuses, right? Nope. So if you have a minus and then a minus, you want a positive and a negative again, but this time your negative one's going to be your bigger number. Okay, so I may go and pause the video, jot that thing down, or just say, hey, that's at 11 minutes right there is where I want to go back to if I need to reference that. Okay. Now, we're going to make it a little bit trickier, because we said at the start that this was solving ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. We haven't really dealt with that equals 0 part yet. So, what we do with that equals 0 part is we're still going to start off by factoring this. So if I've got an x squared minus an 8x plus a 15, so if I have a minus and then a plus, again, both my factors are going to be negative, or they're going to be minus, because we want two negatives to multiply to a positive, and if we add them, it's still going to be negative. So we know we want an x minus something and an x minus something, and this 0 is just going to hang out over here for the moment and almost drift into my other example over here. So far, not so different. And again, we're looking for factors of 15. Limited options there. You've either got 1 and 15, or you've got 3 and 5. Those are really the only things that are going to go into 15. And really one option there that's going to give us 8, because 1 and 15 is not going to give you 8. So if we have 3 and a 5 here, and again, it doesn't matter whether I put 3 and 5 here or 5 and 3 there. They're both negative, so it's okay if I flip-flop them around. I'm going to get rid of this stuff. Okay. Now we're going to deal with that equals 0. And I'm going to grab a different color here. So we said on Thursday, about a week ago, that if you have something times something and you're ending up with 0, the only way that's going to happen is if one of your things is 0. So if this whole thing, this times this, has to equal 0, either this one is 0, or this one is 0. One or the other has to be 0, because that's the only way you get things to multiply to 0. So either x minus 3 equals 0, or x minus 5 equals 0. So one or the other, we're going to solve both of those. So if we're getting rid of subtracting, we're adding. We're going to add a 3. We're going to add a 3. Doink. Those are gone. So either x is 3, or over here, we're going to add a 5 to get rid of subtracting a 5. Those are gone. X equals 5. So importantly, you want both of those. So I'm going to stick a little or in there, but both of those are your answers. So you need them both. So this or that, but that doesn't mean that you just get to put either this one or this one. You want both of those. Okay, good so far? I'm going to assume you said yes. If you didn't say yes, scroll back so you can watch it again. Okay, we're going to do another example. Alright, so over here, same sort of thing. We're looking for factors of 12, and if we want a minus here, again, that's going to be a positive times a negative, and if we want that to be a plus a 4x, your positive is going to be your bigger number. So we're going to have an x, we're going to have an x. And then if we want factors of 12, our options are either 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4, and those are the things that'll give you 12. So if we want to end up with a 4, remember again, if we want that to be a minus, we're looking at numbers that are going to subtract to give you a 4. So if you're looking at this going, well, it doesn't add up to 4, you're right, they don't add up to 4. They're going to subtract to 4. So these ones are the ones we want. So we want a 2, and we want a 6. And if we want that to be a positive 4, that means our bigger number is going to be positive. So it has to be a plus 6 and a minus 2. And again, it's okay if you put that in the other order. So if you said x plus 6 and an x minus 2, that's fine, as long as the plus stays with the 6 and the minus stays with the 2. Okay, I'm going to get rid of these. Alright, and then same sort of thing we were doing over here. We're going to have either x minus 2 equals 0 or x plus 6 equals 0. So if we want two things to multiply to 0, either this is 0 or this is 0. Boom. Okay, so we're going to add 2 together as subtracting 2 plus 2. Those are gone. So 0 plus 2 is 2. And if we're getting rid of adding 6, we're subtracting 6. So this is a minus 6, that minus 6. 0 minus 6 is negative 6. And again, those are the two things that we want. So again, you want both of those. Now, you may have noticed a little pattern here. If we end up with a 2 and a 6 here, we're going to end up with a 2 and a 6 here, but your plus and your minus are flip-flopped around. So as long as you just got an x plus something or an x minus something, you can use that little trick. Okay, it's just going to be the opposite of whatever's here. This is an x minus 2, it's going to be an x equals 2. This is an x plus 6, it's going to be a negative 6. As long as we just have an x here, not like a 2x or a 3x or something, that's going to work. So you can use that little shortcut if you want to. Next lesson, we're going to get into what happens if there's not just an x there. Okay, now, we're going to get a little bit trickier. What if there's not a 0 over there? Because all of this stuff only worked because something times something, if it gives you 0, has to equal something. One of those has to equal 0. So that only works if that's a 0 over there. What if it's not? What if there's a negative 25 over there? So if there's a negative 25 over there, we're just going to get 0 over here on this side. So we're going to get rid of everything on the left and scooch it over to the right. So if we want to get rid of a negative 25, we're going to go ahead and add a 25. Now, importantly, when you're doing that, you're not adding it to this negative 10x. You're not combining those because this one has an x, that one doesn't. Hi, cat. Okay, so now we've got an x squared minus this 10x plus 25. And now we've got the 0 we wanted over here. And again, that's good. That's what we wanted because this stuff only works if we have a 0 over there. Okay, so now we're looking for factors of 25. Conveniently, your only real factors of 25 are either 1 and 25 or 5 and 5. So that 5 and 5 are the ones we want because those are going to add up to 10. And again, if that's a minus there, they're both going to be a minus 5. So I have an x minus 5, and I have an x minus 5, because 5 and 5 gives you 10, 5 times 5 gives you the 25, negative times a negative gives you the positive that we wanted there. Yay. And again, if you want to double check that by going through and foiling it, that's fine. You can always double check these by foiling them back, seeing if you get the thing you started with in the first place. Now, when we take this one and we set those both equal to 0, you may notice that they're the same thing. So if I have an x minus 5 equals 0 over here, and I have an x minus 5 equals 0 over here, you're going to get 5 both times. Because if I add 5, add 5, add 5, add 5, these 5s are gone. These are both 5. So occasionally you're going to get something like this where you've only got one answer because both of your answers came out to the same thing. And that's going to happen whenever you have a repeat here. So whenever we have a double of whatever this factor is, we're going to end up with the same thing. And that's okay. So that's the only time you should get just one answer instead of 2 is when your two things ended up being the same thing. Okay, let's try one more of those. Okay, So this time, same sort of thing, we're going to scooch that over here. We're going to subtract a 9x. Now, when you're doing that, you can just stick it on the end. So if I want to call this an x squared plus an 8 minus a 9x equals 0, that's fine. You can do that. Just watch out for the thing we were saying with the multiply to this and add up to this. You're multiplying to what's usually your last number, but it's always going to be your thing that doesn't have an x. So that's the thing we're looking to multiply to. So it might just be a good habit to stick that on the end instead. So instead of this, I'm going to do this. Same thing, I just rearranged it to make it a little bit clearer that this is the thing we want to multiply to. This is the thing we want our numbers to add up to. So it doesn't really have anything to do with whether it's coming first or whether it's coming next. It's does it have an x to it or does it not? Because the thing that's not is the thing that's going to come from multiplying these two when we're foiling it. So we want things that multiply to that 8, whether that 8 is here or whether that 8 is here. And now, same sort of thing. Equals 0. X. We get an x. So we want things that multiply to 8, which is really either 1 and 8 or 2 and 4. And this time, the 1 and 8 are the ones we want because we want things that are going to add up to 9. So we want the 1 and the 8, and again, no, it doesn't matter whether this is 1 and 8 or 8 and 1, and these are both negative. That's minus, which means that either x minus 1 is 0, or x minus 8 is 0. So then if we want to solve these, we're either adding 1, or we're adding 8. Those are gone. So either x is 1, or x is 8. And again, once you're here, if you figured out, okay, well, it's just going to be the opposite of this, so it's going to be a positive 1 and a positive 8, that's fine. It's a nice little shortcut. Just watch out for that's only going to work if you don't have something in front of your x's, so don't use that in the next section where we have something in front of your x's. Alright, and that'll pretty much do it for factoring those. In the next section, we're going to deal with what happens when there's something in front of your x squared, but for now, it's just this. So check out the homework in the description, and I will see you next time.